All right, right now I'm being joined by Lou Papa. He's the owner and founder of the One Memorabilia Group, and he's actually one of the biggest Michael Jordan enthusiasts, I would say, in the world. Especially when you hear what he has and what maybe he's going to get in the future. Who knows? But Mr. Lou Papa, thank you for joining me.
Khang, I appreciate you taking an interest and having me on. Thank you.
No problem. Absolutely. We're both Michael Jordan enthusiasts, but you may be a little bit more than me, at least with what you have. But the appreciation is still there for the great one that you and I both have.
Yeah, no doubt.
Actually, a couple of weeks ago, I spoke to the legendary Sonny Vaccaro, and we talked about the movie Air, of course, that came out with Matt Damon playing him, and just the stories that he has endless stories about him and Michael Jordan. And one story we did not get to was the fact that Michael Jordan actually gave Mr. Vaccaro a pair of game used shoes in the 1991 NBA Finals. And I'm going to let you speak more on that because these shoes have some history. They're not just any game worn shoes, even though any game worn shoe by Michael Jordan is something that we all wish we could have, or at least most of us. Um, you reached out to me after you saw my interview with Sonny Vaccaro and said, "Hey, I have something that you might want to talk about." And so I want you to let our listeners let them know what you do have and what you reached out to me with that you do have.
No, thank you. Like I said, yeah, I saw your interview. I follow you on your social platforms, and I think everybody has started to talk a little bit more, about Air Jordan 1 and Michael coming to Nike, and I think the younger generation, doesn't completely know the full story, of kind of how he got there. So, now with the new movie Air coming out, and then you introduced Sonny, and then I saw that I think Colin Coward had him on as well. Um, so, as I was watching both interviews, I was like, man, I got to reach out to these guys, just to kind of say hello and just say, hey, maybe we could do like a little bit of a follow up. So as the movie, takes place in, basically 84, 85. And then Sonny continued to work at Nike through 1991, which was the Bulls' first championship run when they beat Magic Johnson and the Lakers. After they finally got through the Pistons, the bad boy Pistons were beating them up, 3 years in a row. So what happened was is that at some point, and I don't know if Sonny shared the story with you because I certainly don't know exactly why he was let go from Nike in '91, but sometime after the finals and after Sonny was let go, Michael, either stopped by himself or had someone deliver the pair of shoes from the '91 finals, as you said, Game 4, to Sonny's hotel. As a thank you for bringing them to Nike and saying, hey, kind of like, I'll miss you, but I wanted to give you something as a going away present. So what's really cool about the shoe is that Michael got hurt in Game 3 in the final. So the series was 1-1, and in Game 3, Bulls were down 2 with about 10, 12 seconds to go, and they ran a last play, and Michael hit a mid-range jumper to tie it. And on that play, he got hurt. I don't know if somebody stepped on his toe or he jammed it as he was jumping to make the shot, but he got hurt. Um, and then played on it, and the Bulls, wound up winning that game in overtime. But going into Game 4, he hadn't practiced, and he was trying to ice his foot and take as much care of it as he could. And to relieve some of the pressure, he actually cut a hole in the shoe in his toe box, like right where you'd see it. And it's a really big hole. Like you can, when you see the shoe, like it kind of goes from like, imagine kind of like where your toe starts, like all the way up through the top of the shoe.
It's almost, yeah. I mean, you must imagine his toe must have been pretty swollen to get to need that big of a slit and to relieve some of that pressure, almost like a not like a flip flop, but I mean, honestly, he's opened up the shoe.
Yeah, and you could probably see that, or at least guess that he had multiple pairs of socks on, to try to keep it as good as he could. So anyway, so that pair of shoes, like is famous, because then he wound up gifting that exact pair to Sonny, as a thank you. And as I've been kind of telling people, and hopefully as they see the movie, they see it going forward, is that there is no Air Jordan. Like there's no such thing as any of this without Sonny Vaccaro. And what has always made me the an enthusiast is I grew up with it all, but I grew up watching Big East basketball as well. And as you know, Sonny was a legend in putting together, the the Dapper Don tournaments, and and then he was giving out shoes to the coaches in the Big East, and then that's how everybody started wearing Nikes. So when you dig into his story, it's really fascinating. And then the movie kind of brings it out that it's like, hey, Sonny's, was directly responsible for bringing Michael to Nike. And then, and then you see these shoes and you're just like, wow, this is a really cool connection. Like the backstory is absolutely wild.
Yeah, it's wild because the thing is, Sonny was gifted these shoes by MJ, and he only decided to put them up for auction or sell them because the falling out between him, Nike, and Phil, and then I think the Last Dance movie where he wasn't in it at all. He just felt disrespected. It didn't. He wanted to just move on from these shoes, and these aren't just any pair of shoes. I mean, you gave the background story on. First of all, it's not just a Michael Jordan game used shoe. It's a Michael Jordan NBA final shoe, and it's not just a Michael Jordan NBA final shoe. It's the slit shoe. There's an actual story with this shoe that you had the injury, had to slit it open and all that. So I mean, this story has more than just history, and it didn't even need that because it's already a Michael Jordan shoe. But like I said, it has even more layers on top of that. And so when you saw that this shoe was going to be available, did you immediately say, I got to have it? Or like, what's the thought process when you find out that this is going to be available?
So, for me, I kind of, over the last handful of years, I've been more of a sports card CARD collector than I was memorabilia. But about maybe two plus years ago, I started making the switch because my kids are getting of an age where they're more into sneakers and jerseys than they are into cards, and I like to do the collecting with them. Even though there's an investment involved, obviously, when you're putting out the money, but it's still a lot of fun to open up the boxes and things that are coming in from whether it be an auction house or another collector. And so I try to take like a YouTube or just like an Instagram live of us opening it together and kind of telling them what they are and having some enjoyment out of it. So to answer your question, like I had started doing some research with a couple of friends of mine that are I would call them Jordan historians and experts. And these guys have been at it in terms of memorabilia much, much longer than I have. And, they were gracious, to give me a lot of time, to educate me on like, hey, these are the things that you're looking for. And then, just in terms of importance. And I kind of gave them an idea of maybe what I had to spend. And then they came out and said, like, look, when this came for auction, they were like, this, in our opinion, is a top 5 pair of Michael Jordan shoes ever. But, based on, the story, the backstory, that they're a pair of final shoes. So, when we talked through it, that was enough for me. Like I trusted their judgment, and the rest is just like a little bit of blind luck. That all of a sudden a movie comes out about Sonny, and like.
Oh,
Then,
yeah, I mean, it's hey, you know what? Sometimes it's luck and sometimes it's intuition. I mean, maybe you didn't know, but you figure Michael Jordan's a safe investment. Things like investments, you're not sure, but there's stuff that you take chances on, like prospects, young guys. But then there's stuff that are guys that are already etched in history. And of course, Michael Jordan's there. But yeah, we speak of the game and the slit, but the fact that he gave these shoes to the man who helped sign him to Nike, that is maybe the top layer of it all. And I already spoke about all the great historical stuff with the shoe already, but that he gave these shoes, he gifted these shoes to the man that helped sign him to Nike. And then, like you said, the movie comes out, and yeah, this might be a top 5 shoe. I don't know. When you're talking to your advisors or just people that help you, with information, the historians, you call them, how do you come up with, like, when you're a high-end collector, a lot of our listeners aren't able to do this, but so how do you come up with an evaluation of, what is, hey, this is what I'm looking to spend. What do you think this shoe is worth? Things like that. What's my limit? Where do I draw a line in the sand for something like this? Like you go, I guess, is there a comp for, do you look at other shoes and their historical reference? How does it work?
It's a good question. And then the cool thing about memorabilia, is that each item is its own one of one, unlike cards, right? Where they can make an RPA to 99 and then make some subsets of it to 20 and 10 and 5 and 3 and all that kind of stuff. So from there, I think it's just a matter of trying to evaluate the importance, in terms of history. And, like I said, I trusted these guys, and they've done well by me, and just being confidants. And and friends and such. So, what was interesting was that the pair originally was sold through Sotheby's, this Sunny pair, and it went unpaid for. So I did have an opportunity to see what it went for there, and I think, and then they reappeared magically, at Golden, and then I think, if I'm not mistaken, they had a reserve price on them, which was basically the equivalent of what they had sold for at Sotheby's. And then I wound up being the high bid, and I don't think it quite hit the reserve. So at that point, I think Sonny and Ken, had to make a decision on, hey, would you be willing to let him go? Because I was close, to where it was. It's just that nobody had bid higher than me. So when it was over, I was the high bid, and then the two of them made a decision and said, "Yep, we know that this guy will pay," and Ken's like, he's a good guy, and sort of the the rest became history in terms of, I made payment, and then the shoes were shipped out. So that's kind of how it went to be. But in terms of, like, what would I have paid more? I probably had another bid or two left in me, just because I figured I figured that, like, if my guys were right, and this pair is what they, were telling me that they were, then I figured, like, okay, this is something that I can put away for a while, and just, eventually something else will surface.
Yeah,
And
like I said, I mean, it sounds Michael Jordan. You think there's not, as far as memorabilia, could there be a safer bet? I mean, we had the pandemic peak, but other than that, I
well,
think
now, Kang, you probably saw. Did you see the over last week? Did you see the Sotheby's sale for the '98 final shoes?
I was gonna bring it up to you, and I was gonna bring that up. The Air Jordan 13s from the '98 Game 2 Finals went for $2.2 million.
Right.
Now, I know people listening right now want to know two things. One, how much you paid for the 91 NBA final shoe, the slit shoe. And when you do win something like that, or purchase something like that, and you said they ship it to you, I mean, is that something where hey, I got to go fly out there and get it? How do they ship that to you, Armed
Sure.
guards,
Well,
what?
to answer your first question, I paid 215,000 for them. I think, like, a little over 2 years ago, or something like that. And then, in terms of the shipping of the shoe, yeah, once you get into, a number like that, a lot of times they'll ship via, like, armored truck. And then that way, you sign for it, and it's kind of weird, because, like, an armed guard comes up to your house, and
That's yeah.
yeah. So that was kind of a neat experience, and I've done the same. Like, if there's been another collector who, has bought something expensive from me, and I try to create a good experience for them. Like, so if it's going to be, say, a transaction for, just say, like, 100K or more, I want to make sure that, it's shipped exactly the way they want it, fully insured, and make sure that they have as good of an experience as possible, because that's really important, when you're spending that kind of money, especially if it's, a historical artifact, like, which I consider this to be.
Absolutely, it is. And just for, like I said, a lot of listeners that are like maybe just kind of dipping into the collecting game, whether it's cards, memorabilia. When you like they see the buyer's premium, when you're in these big auction houses, is
Yep.
that price built into the delivery and all that stuff too, and the insurance and everything?
So the buyer's premium is built into the final price. So when you saw the Sotheby's auction, that did it, because it did kind of like a funky number. It was like 2.238 million or something like that. So that included, I think Sotheby's is like a 26 or 27% buyer's premium. So I believe the actual bid on the um, on the shoe was like 1.8 or 1.85, and then you multiply the buyer's premium into that. Um, to answer the second part of that, the typically shipping and insurance adds on to the cost. That's not always built in. Some people will do it. Like, as an example, like, if somebody buys from me, I'll ship at my own cost. Because I think that that's part of, a high end customer service, especially if somebody's spending a lot of money. I mean, like, they don't want to be nickeled and dimed, and they're gonna be like, Lou, if I send you XYZ amount of dollars, like, I really don't want you to bill me $500 for FedEx. Like, that's right. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
And
it's
you're
just,
like, hey, you spent enough. I got it's on me. I'll take care of it.
yeah, yeah. You don't want to be, like, it just feels obnoxious. But
Absolutely.
the auction houses do build that in, to the profit. So you do pay a little more for the shipping.
Okay. Also, you brought up the shoes that, for people that don't know, a pair of Jordan 13 shoes, game worn final shoes from 1998, game two specifically, just sold for $2.2 million. You mentioned it. Now, when you saw that sale and you think, hey, man, I got these shoes over here. How much are my shoes worth? I mean, are you just thinking these shoes are more historically like this is what I got is better than that, right?
Yeah, and I think all collectors do that. Certainly, right, like especially in cards, saying like, "Hey, I have the logo man of XYZ player," right? As opposed to say like when you're ripping a pack or something, and you say like, "Oh, I hit the 99, true RPA." You always finding something else. So yeah, I mean, I firmly believe that from a historical context, and obviously the just the significance of the shoe, coupled with the movie, I think will bring this pair to light. Just in terms of saying like, hey, at a minimum, these should be, something equivalent to, what just sold at what's at Sotheby's. The story is better, the provenance is better. And Sonny, has also had his own 30 for 30 on ESPN called Soul Man, if anybody wanted to watch that. And then there's another documentary about Jordan. Michael wasn't in it, but it was called A Man in His Shoes, or One Man in His Shoes. It's pretty good. And Sonny's in that for about 5 minutes. And in that documentary, he shows the shoes. So this was pre Last Dance, and he was like so proud to show them off. He kept them; they were very well maintained, for the 30 years that he had them.
And
So
they're signed, by the way. I don't know if I mentioned that earlier. Michael Jordan signed the shoes that you do have. So,
yeah,
they signed them for Sonny, but you have the shoes.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Each both the left and the right shoe are signed. Yep. So it's a fabulous pair, and like I said, just with I just think the movie's going to bring Sonny more mainstream, to really allow people to understand, like my son is 15 and he wears Jordans and whatever is cool, but he didn't know the backstory, so I took him to the movie. We went last Friday and he loved it. It was just so I think like the kids coming up, that they're wearing the Jordan brand stuff, but they may not know all the backstory to it. And then when you factor in like Sonny signed Kobe to Adidas, so that was a landmark deal too. He signed Tracy McGrady to Adidas, and as he may have mentioned to you, I mean, he was basically a millimeter away from signing LeBron to Adidas. If
Yeah,
Adidas,
he was pretty upset about that. And that's pretty much what ended his career, I guess, in the shoe game. He kind of walked away after that. He felt that he promised something to LeBron, and Adidas didn't cover their end of it. And so, I mean, those are some historical basketball figures right there: Kobe, Michael Jordan, LeBron, and he was
I
involved
mean,
in three of them.
can you
Got
imagine?
two of them. Yeah.
Right. I mean, and he had LeBron. I mean, it was a done deal. Like it was. It's fascinating. And like, and so just to when you hear the story, and because I have another pair of shoes that's pretty cool too. Um, I have the Kobe 911 shoes, the red, white, and blue ones that he had custom made after the horrific attack, and he gifted a pair to LeBron, and LeBron wore those in a high school game against Carmelo. So this pair of shoes is worn by both Kobe and LeBron, and it's really cool. And like Sonny, like had LeBron signed with Adidas, it would have been wild, because that pair of shoes is the Kobe pair of shoes is Adidas. It was before he switched over to Nike. So it just the triangle of Sonny between those three, and then happening to have those two pair of shoes is it's pretty wild.
No, it's an amazing, yeah, couple pair of shoes you have there. And we spoke about the record deal for the Jordan shoe that just sold for 2.2 million, and then what your shoe could possibly be worth now with that sale. You bought yours a couple of years ago. Do you ever Now you're an investor. You come from my financial background. You're a financial advisor for what 20 some years or so, right? Licensed financial, certified financial advisor. So hey, the investments are eventually meant to be sold or moved on at some point. I heard a great line where if you just keep buying and never sell, you're going to go broke, So at some point you got to sell, right? What do you do with stuff like that you have in like these pair of shoes from Sonny Vaccaro? Like, is this something you want to pass down to your children? You mentioned you have children, or is it some point where, hey, I can't take it with me when I die? What do you think about your collection, and what is the deciding factor whether you move on from something or not?
Yeah. So, being a financial advisor, it feels like a lifetime ago, because I've been out of it now for about 5 or 6 years. But, But but you never unlearn the principles that that you studied and kind of got you there. So to answer your question, I think everything probably has a price, to where you'd have to move on from it. Um, and that would include these, or pretty much anything in a collection, and because you can kind of see it, right? I mean, Bill Russell let his collection go, prior to him passing, and you saw Cal Ripken, sell his stuff. Kareem sold his stuff, so I think you have to keep in mind that we're just like short-term stewards of these historical artifacts, right? I mean, the Declaration of Independence and that kind of stuff's going to outlive us all. I saw that either Christie's or Sotheby's had some kind of Ming Dynasty chair that was like 400 or 500 years old. It sold for like millions and millions of dollars, and it was restored really nicely, and so all these things will certainly outlive us. So you just try to create as much happiness and that you can around owning what you have, for as long as you can keep it. So I don't think it'll be something that I'll have to pass down to my kids, but you never know. Sometimes there's just something that tugs at your heartstrings where you're just like, man, I just can't let this one go.
Is there any piece right now that would it be these shoes, or is there anything that you would be like, would be the hardest for me to move on from?
I think these shoes are probably the coolest thing in my collection. I would say, given the story, and especially with everything that's coming out now. But I do like the backstory to the LeBron Kobe shoes. I think those are cool, and I do have this one probably make people laugh, but I have a full head to toe game worn uniform of Jordan, but not only is it jersey, shorts, and sneakers, I also have the socks, the 23 compression shorts that he wore underneath the shorts, and then a pair of his UNC practice shorts that he always wore underneath his Bulls and Wizard shorts.
That's same from all that game or whatever.
It's not all from the same game.
Okay, all right.
It's a little bit of mix and match. We'll
Yeah,
call it like a Frankenstein uniform, like where it's a little bit mix and match, but
yeah.
like it's just such a crazy concoction that I think like it's one of those things that cannot be duplicated. So I just love it.
No, that's fantastic. I mean, he used to wear. Did you mention that like the armband or wristband? I remember he used to wear one like kind of right below the elbow, and I mean that's very cool too. The Carolina shorts. I mean, that was if people don't know that he used to always wear those underneath. That's a big one, I think, personally for me. But like, doesn't mean it has to be worth the most. But you and I, who are big MJ enthusiasts, like we stuff like that matters to us. But it doesn't have to be the most expensive thing. But maybe something that just means a lot to you that might be hard to let go.
Yeah, agreed. And sometimes it's just it's the thrill of the hunt also. Sometimes when you can acquire something that like it can't be duplicated, or that there's only like three or four of them. It's just like you're like, okay, people will be like, hey man, did you like his compression shorts? They're like, did you buy like his underwear? And I'm like, no, like not but I'm like creating like a mannequin in my house.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So, I mean, you mentioned cards earlier. Are you still doing sports cards and trading cards and things like that?
I love cards. I haven't been in them probably for the last 6 to 9 months or so. But it is my intention to kind of return to it. I've been having a lot of fun with the memorabilia space, like I said, with the kids. So it was sort of a conscious decision to move on from them for a bit so that I can kind of stay engaged with the kiddos, and keep their interest in it, because I do think that'll be something fun for them down the road. So cards, they loved ripping packs and wax or whatever, but they, trying to keep them well, excuse me, keeping the cards well curated, or in mint condition, or wanting to get them graded, they kind of lost a little bit of interest there. So
Yeah.
but
Because
as
they
they,
want to touch them, they want to feel them. Your kids. That's the whole point. That's why it was so fun growing up. You rip them and you touch them, and now you're told to never put them away and never touch them ever again. Put them encapsulate them or whatever, right?
yeah, exactly. So I just a lot of times I'll just buy random boxes of stuff and
Yeah.
just rip it and go wild, and and then whatever they want to do with them, they can. But so I think I'll always have cards, in my life. But right now, like I said, my focus is a little bit more here, and has been for the better part of the last 18 or so months. As I started diving in more. And then like in the last 6 to 9 months, I raised more cash, if you will, to, by selling cards, and then, kind of continuing, buying a handful of game worn shoes, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, reinvesting it into memorabilia and things like that. Well, speaking of which, I mean, there's the Nationals coming up this year that has mostly cards, but there is some memorabilia. I was there a couple years ago in Chicago. It's back in Chicago this year, but there was some Jordan game worn shoes. People had displayed cool things like that. Do you plan on going to Nationals since it's in Chicago this year?
Yeah, I do, and I agree with you. Like even though it is predominantly cards, which is great because that'll get my interest to saying like, all right, look, you missed this, you need to go buy something. And there's so many great dealers and vendors and such, so it's always nice to catch up with the people in the community. But to your point though, like the auction houses will typically bring some really high end memorabilia. I mean, Heritage always has a lot of nice stuff. PWCC, Golden, like they always bring really cool stuff. To the National. And if I'm not mistaken, I think last year in Atlantic City, CSG, the card grading company, they had the Dynasty collection. Like they were showing off the 6 shoes of MJ's finals. So I think, but it's one shoe from each of the clinching games. And they nicknamed it the Dynasty collection. I think Sotheby's is marketing it now, and estimates are anywhere from like 25 million to $100 million.
Wow.
There's a lot of cool like inscriptions on the shoe. So I don't know if this is true, but I think it's believed that Michael has one of the shoes, and then he gave this, the other, whether he kept the right or the left, I don't know, but the other part of the pair is being, I think it's owned by like his former trainer, or somebody that's, or maybe a security guard, but somebody that's really well connected with him, and he gave him each of the final game of the clinching. So it's pretty cool. So this guy would have game 5 against the Lakers, whereas I have game 4, and then I think all the other finals were clinched in 6. So he would have game 6 twice against the Jazz, Portland, and so on and so forth, Seattle, Phoenix.
Yeah, I mean, I missed Atlantic City this past one, but I was in Chicago 2 years ago. I plan on going to Chicago again this year. Hopefully we can meet up and just, see each other, introduce each other face to face.
Yeah, I'd love to meet you. This is so cool, and what you're doing is great. Being able to get interviews like Sonny and things like that, it's amazing because there's stories that need to be told. And these guys are tough to get, and it's such a blessing for the community to really hear from live, ultimately historical figures that were in the room making deals that changed outcomes of generations. I mean, Michael, I mean, not to get like too sentimental or whatever, but I mean, he literally changed the world with this.
Well, you saw my interview with Sonny. I mean, that's one of the reasons why he thinks he's the greatest of all time. He changed the landscape for the generation that followed.
Yep.
And he was telling me, in his opinion, Wembanyama needs to get a piece of it. He thinks at this point, because that's really hard for a lot of these athletes to do. I mean, they'll get a signature shoe and they'll get a bunch of guaranteed money, but to get a piece of the profits, that's what Jordan changed the game.
100%. And yeah, if you think about it, so like 2 things. I mean, because Larry Bird was the first guy to, get like a quote unquote like fully guaranteed, kind of contract in the NBA. He saw a contract, I think, when Moses Malone signed with the Sixers, and he was like, "Well, I want that," and the Celtics are like, "No, we're not doing that." But then he came up with another way, and then as soon as Bird signed that contract, then all of a sudden, that became sort of the precipice for guaranteed money in the NBA. And then the contracts, or the teams then said, hey, okay, well, if that's going to happen, then we want what they now call Larry Bird rights. If you're with the same team for 5 years, et cetera, we get to offer an extra year, so that, there's something compelling, that not everybody's just like, hey, I'm going to go to free agency and, just kind of see like what happens. And then recently, I think it was also, it was either earlier this week or late last week, you saw that Steph Curry just got like a ton of stock and like options in Under Armour, to be kind of like a lifetime guy, with Under Armour. So he got like 8.8 million shares or something to that effect. So, this is kind of the new way. I mean, like if Jordan didn't do these things, then, none of this would exist. So
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I was reading that Curry might have left Under Armour unless they came to the table with something, and they came to the table with something big because he's one of their biggest stars. And um, one more thing before I let you go. I get killed a lot. I'm here in Detroit. I'm a big Michael Jordan fan, so that's not a normal thing out here. But I'm still a big Bad Boys fan, still a big Pistons fan. But I just was drawn to Michael Jordan and his greatness, his competitiveness. Obviously, what he did on the court, and I guess I was just drawn to him. That's why I followed him and became a Michael Jordan collector. You mentioned earlier you grew up on the East Coast. What was it? What led you to Michael, and why did you become hey, this is the guy I got to collect, or this is the guy I want to invest in? Well, why Michael Jordan for you?
sure, no, it's a great question, and I'm kind of assuming that I'm a little bit older than you, Kang. So I'm 48, so I had the opportunity to, like, I was always a big college basketball fan. So, I saw him even at an early age, at North Carolina, and then as a Sixers fan, I went to a lot of games because the tickets certainly weren't as difficult to get. In the later 80s and early 90s, we were good, but not really that good. So it's not like it is today where, tickets are super expensive. So I got to see Jordan play, pretty much once or twice a year, in Philadelphia, which was a treat. And then as he became greater and greater, I mean, he was must see TV on NBA on NBC. I mean, like every Sunday, it was like Bulls Knicks, Bulls Pistons, Bulls Lakers, and then and occasionally Bulls Philly. So, and you just kept watching them, and you're like, I can't believe what this guy does. And gosh, I mean, he's responsible for keeping us out of the title mix. That's for sure during his career. Like, like there was just so many guys that didn't eat because Michael ate all the time. You know what I mean? Like there's just so many great players in the 80s and 90s that didn't get chips, because of Jordan and your bad boy Pistons. I mean, those guys, it just nobody else could eat because you guys were so good.
Yeah, I mean, in my opinion, of course, I'm being, I'm biased here, but every year that basically Michael Jordan played in the league after his sophomore year, he should have maybe won the MVP, or at least starting in '91 when he won his first title. I think the '90s belonged to him. I think maybe Barkley got one that maybe was deserved by Barkley. The Karl Malone year, I think we all can agree that was not. It should have been a Jordan year, but either way, yeah. When he started winning, he didn't stop. I mean, 6-0 in the finals, we all know that, and then the retire year, and you know, he could have, yeah, he ate a lot, that's for sure. And unfortunately, a lot of Hall of Famers were unable to get rings during the Michael Jordan era, especially when they got rolling.
Yeah, I mean, if
So,
you think about it, Michael Jordan played, like, the Bulls had him for 11 fully healthy years. Like if you throw out like you said, his sophomore year and then like the year and a half that he was retired, and he brought him 6 rings in 11 years, right? I mean, by contrast, Cleveland had LeBron for 11 healthy years, and he brought them one, right? I mean, so I mean, it's just and I think there's only been a couple of teams that have three-peated ever. Michael did it twice. In like the last 50 years, you're talking about like Kobe and the Lakers and Jordan and the Bulls. And it's just wild. I mean, like if you really sit and think about it, he three-peats, retires, but it's not like he went to go sit on the couch. Then he tries out, plays a completely different sport, trains completely differently, sits out for 18 months, kind of comes back. They still make a little bit of a run, but they didn't have enough. And then the year after, and then he three-peats again. I mean,
yeah,
it's unbelievable.
it's truly unbelievable. But well, thanks for joining me, Mr. Lou Papa, the owner founder of the One Memorabilia Group. I'll probably be catching you down the line at some point when you maybe sell these shoes or maybe buy another big purchase. We'll talk about it because I could do this all day, and we'll catch up definitely too, and hopefully at National in Chicago.
Dang, thank you for taking an interest in the story. I appreciate it. And yeah, I look forward to meeting you in Chicago for sure. And, maybe, if everything's there, maybe I'll have them on display through one of the auction houses or something.
That would be really cool, man. I appreciate it. Thank
I,
you.
I wish you much success in everything that you're doing. Love the show, and congrats on getting these great interviews. And thank you for, like I said, thank you for taking an interest. This was a treat.
Not a problem, man. Appreciate it.